The Catholic Church is not in the best shape, especially if one looks at its leadership. The current Pope, Pope Francis, is likely one of the most controversial in the Church's history. And I've met a lot of Catholics and Christians as well who look at the Pope and say, well, he's doing these very, very controversial things, allowing the blessing of homosexual marriages, or trying to get rid of, there's a word for it, but the fact that the priests cannot be married, right? He's trying to get rid of that rule, and a lot of other controversial things, a lot of very, very non-traditional things, almost going completely against the Church's traditions. And it can be very, very hard to be a Catholic and try to stand with a firm ground on, this religion, when the leadership is doing a lot of very, very non-traditional and non-Catholic-like things. So does the Church leadership states, whatever the Church leadership, whatever they state, does that dictate how Catholics should go about their lives?
Yes and no. So as long as the Church hierarchy, being the leadership, from the priests, bishops, cardinals, all the way to the Pope, as they do what they're supposed to do, means protecting the doctrine, protecting the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. Yes, they do at that point. However, if they do something which goes against those teachings of the Catholic Church, against its doctrine, against its tradition, then no, absolutely no. They're not supposed to. Mm-hmm. And seems to be that certain people in a church, for not just now, but it's been going on for decades, have been abusing their authority to the point that not they bringing the wrong things, they bring in the things, the rules, the teachings which are sacrilegious to the Roman Catholic Church. And therefore at that point, no, people not how to listen these ideas and follow them at all, because because they are sacrilegious. Unfortunately, you know it yourself, the strong majority of Roman Catholics, because the entire teaching has been so watershed for so long, right? Most of the Catholics, they don't even know what is right and what is wrong anymore. Mm-hmm. And that, unfortunately, made them very, very morally flexible. And they are okay with many of the things, happening. You can look at the, people who you know in the family. You can look at the people who you met, Roman Catholics, or you can look at the people who are, plainly visible, in politics, Joe Biden, Roman Catholic; John Kerry, Roman Catholic; Nancy Pelosi, Roman Catholic.
Un-Catholic things like abortion and homosexual marriage.
As we said actually a few days before, they are worse than atheists. Mm-hmm. That's because they compromise so many times, and they know so little about the teachings that they have no problem. And they got to the point again that they even believe that those things they support, which are sacrilegious, are actually part of the church, which are completely not. And I don't know what is to blame for. I mean, it definitely is part of the hierarchy, but this big part, it is, on us, the regular Roman Catholics. We just do not know as much. We should know, but we don't. And it's very, very peculiar, because nowadays we got such a huge access to all the informations, just the internet itself, right? That most of the Roman Catholics should be including myself, should be very well versed on all the teachings. But it seems to me that all of us, we know less about our faith and what is right and what is wrong than people, knew, let's say, 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, majority of the Roman Catholics, they're not going to even know what are the 10 Commandments. That's the easiest thing, right? The 10 Commandments, and they will struggle with it. So, and again, that should be ingrained in our lives. If people don't know what's right and what's wrong, then it's very easy to manipulate them. And that goes even for the Roman Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, the 10 Commandments, that should be, with all of us every single day, every single minute of our lives. So when we do something, we should already know if this is wrong or this is good, what we're going to do, right? But again, if people don't know it, then it's easy to cross the boundary to the negative.
Right.
Now, does that answer the question, or do you want me to go a little bit deeper?
No, I think it does.
Mm-hmm.
There again, as you mentioned earlier, there is times when yes, it's good to follow church leadership, but when the church goes so against their traditional dogma, then it's it's an obligation almost that the Catholics and most Christians out there as well should do what's right, do what's actually been told in the Bible and elsewhere, what actually needs to be correctly followed. And at the end of the day, the church is not an extension of God, right? I know some people like to think that it's like, it's the Pope is like, almost like the highest being, but no, the Pope is just a human, right? He's just about the same as, any one of us, right? And I once had a priest say that the Pope is kind of, the church leadership is almost kind of like a hospital, right? It's kind of like supposed to be like almost like a guide. But obviously we're now living in a time when this hospital is flawed in and of itself. And so what you can gain out of it is probably not as valuable as what it used to be, pre-Vatican II, back in the 60s. So, I think that you pretty much answered that question. However, I do want to ask, so how should people continue to live with Catholic principles when the leadership is unstable? How should we guide ourselves?
Understand that we all of us need to start to be a militant Catholics. A militant means not to take the guns and go fight.
Right.
Militant means protecting the faith. We stop doing that. We are like the soldiers who decided a few decades back that we're not going to fight anymore and we're just going to be sitting in our military bases and enjoying the life, taking paychecks, going home to our families every evening and just do that monotonous thing, but without any fighting, to the point that when our country has been attacked, we as a soldiers don't know how to fight anymore. That's where we are right now with our Roman Catholic Church. We stopped fighting for what we believed is the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly but surely, because of that, one thing after another in our society eroded. Considering, the moral teachings. So this is a little bit kind of away, from the hierarchy and from the church itself. But that's one of the, big, big reasons what happened to us. I mean, consider, like, for example, like church or the moral principles is like a building, right? Structure, multiple story building, That building will need continuous work on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some maintenance crew. If it needs to be livable, if it has to be good shape, therefore there's going to be some maintenance crew which do continuous maintenance on a building. For example, painting outside, every year or so, painting it, sealing the windows, sealing the doors, making sure that the air conditioning is working in the summer, that the heating works in the winter, like just keeping it, in good shape. And if people will stop doing that, it's going to be like in that documentary they were making, some years ago about those cities, which they kind of make it like, what would happen if people would disappear from that city?
Right.
And they show, that city 10 days later, 10 years later, like progressively how it starts falling apart.
Life after people. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, life after the people, yeah. So that's kind of a similar thing to that. That's what happened to the church. If people stop defending its principles, then the faith will disappear, slowly will just disintegrate to something, which is unusable anymore. That's what we are right now at. Yeah, definitely is part of the hierarchy. Yeah, definitely there is, multiple different reasons why, church, itself, the leadership started, to slowly to fall apart, and yeah, there was, of course, the communism, slowly kind of seeped into the church,
Mm-hmm.
There were also some nefarious people who got, into the church, through the seminaries and so on. There was also, of course, influence, by the, different state agents, especially from Russia, right, who got inside, church as well, and so on. Yeah, all these things, of course, yeah, and that's the work of the devil, right? Devil is part of this world, Therefore he will keep trying. But also there's the other part, the secular part means us people, regular, parishioners. We just stop fighting for the church. So to fix it, we got to change our lives. If the faith in God is so important for our lives, right, for our afterlife, that the only way to get to the heaven is through the faith, through our lives, to how we live our lives here on the earth, then that should be number one thing for us, to live our lives according to church teachings, according to his dogmas, according to his history, right? And we don't do that anymore. We kind of put our faith at like third or fourth place. First is, okay, I got my job or my school I go to. Then maybe it's my family. Then it's my free time, my personal things, my hobbies, and so on.
Right.
Then maybe even my friends after that. And maybe then is the politics.
Can't forget about
like
personal
everything.
Finances, right? That's also
Yeah. Like everything is, before that, because it's kind of closer to our lives, because that's what we think most of the day. And the very last thing is our Catholic faith.
Yeah.
Because we don't think about it anymore. Really, it doesn't affect us. We just think about it maybe on Sunday, because we got to go to the church, and that's about it. And maybe some holidays like a Christmas or an Easter. That's it, and that is completely wrong. So we need to put our priorities straight. And it's got to come from us. Yeah, if you're going to fix, the church, then we have to start from us. pointing the finger at the Pope, pointing the finger at the bishops and cardinals, or pointing the finger at the priest, not going to change anything. We can complain about it. We can write the articles to the news. We can make movies about it. We can, talk about it on social media. That's good, all good. But that will not fix anything.
Right. At the end of the day, it's the church body, not its one or two leaders. It's actually the church body as a whole doing the right thing. And when the whole church body, the whole church population is doing the wrong thing, is so morally bankrupt, then the whole church is going to start slipping. And
Jesus Christ said in New Testament, the good tree will bring forth a good fruits. And vice versa, the bad tree will bring forth the bad fruits. It cannot be a mixture of these. It cannot be good fruit, good trees are going to bring the bad fruit, right? Or the bad tree is going to bring forth, the good fruit. It's not going to happen. It will not happen. So whatever we have right now, the fruits of our labor, because the tree is wrong, meaning our lives are wrong. We do something wrong with our lives. We made this world, so even complaining to God, like, God, why you allow this and that, that's not God's fault. We created it. There's certain things which we cannot affect, the diseases, and so on, right? Natural disasters. But except that, that is our own doing, our self-inflicted injury. So going back to that, people got to start changing their very own lives. I'm talking about now about Roman Catholics. I'm not going to persuade, the other denominations, or especially I'm not persuade, the atheists. But the Roman Catholics, they got to actually do what is the right thing to do and start with them first, their own very personal lives, their own families. That's how it's got to start. And then we'll definitely see some huge results right after that.
Yeah, and also to stop being passive about our religion too, to actually start taking active steps and actually standing for your religion, this religion, right? And applying that to our lives, as you said. So
yes, absolutely. Nowadays, if I talk to some of my friends, and there is a few of them who are Roman Catholics, but they decided not to practice their faith anymore. And I tell them straight, like, hey, don't complain about Pope. Don't complain about this. You don't go to church yourself. You got to start living actually life. Well, are you living the good life? Well, that's not what God is asking you. Do you know even the 10 Commandments? And as I said, most of them, they don't. Right? So fix first your own life. Start living what God wanted you to do right from the beginning. What is a part of our, part of our dogmas, right? Part of our, principles. Like, hey, you gotta be practicing in a church. It doesn't mean that you pray at home. You need to go to the church.
It's an obligation.
The churches are built for the reason. It is. Churches are built for the reasons. For 2,000 years. So saying like, well, I don't need to, well, that's a Protestants. They can be the idea eventually, some denominations, watershed denominations, but it has nothing to do with the Roman Catholic Church, nothing to do with the faith, and it was never part of the Roman Catholic Church. So saying that, well, I just pray at home, that's completely false, because we got, for example, we have communion. You cannot do that at home, right? We have confessions. Well, you're not going to confess at home to the priest unless you are sick or something, right? So, there's many things that you cannot do at home. So it's completely false. That's just praying at home is enough. And of course, we cannot be timid, As I said, you got to start talking to the people. I don't want to say take a pride, because the pride is, not the best word to describe. To describe it. But Don't be afraid. I would tell people, don't be afraid to show that you are Roman Catholic and that you live those principles. Why the atheists are not afraid to say, I'm atheist, I live as I want to, and I do this, that, and that. But we are afraid.
Mm-hmm.
We are afraid to say, I'm Roman Catholic, and this is what I believe is right, and this is what I believe is wrong.
It's almost like we're worried that we're going to offend somebody, but people offend Catholics all the time.
The other side. Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and they have nothing, nothing to back it up with, like atheists, for example, like why they doing these things? I mean, because I want to. We have the church history, 2,000 years. And most importantly, we have God, Lord Jesus Christ. And then we get also, of course, the Old Testament history, which is part of our faith as well. There's so much, right? But we are afraid to use it. And we are like the soldiers who got to the battle, but we don't even know how to use our rifles anymore. We don't know how to, use the proper tactics to defend our country. We don't know it anymore. So that's where it's got to start.
Mm-hmm. Just one last question, because I know we're kind of running short on time. Are the things the church leadership states even important for the average Catholic? We kind of touched on it a little bit, but just kind of, I guess, to simplify the answer a little bit, are Catholics 100% bound to? No, sorry. Should they even pay attention at all to what the church leadership states with certain dogma and certain rules and policies, or should there be a bit of a nuance to that?
Yeah, I mean, we gotta know what they're saying, but following it not. The church leadership is just about like us, right? They are just like us. They are the human beings who are fallible as much as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And take it as a politician. Unlike, politicians, they think today, they are not in charge of anything. Especially they're not in charge of people's lives. Politicians are the servants of the people.
Mm-hmm.
They were elected by their constituents, and they serving to the will of their constituents. They're not supposed to do what they wanted to do because they are the smarter ones and people are the stupid. Because if the people are stupid, as a lot of politicians, they believe so, then the stupid people elected stupid people in charge. Then, okay, then politicians bound to be stupid as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stupid people cannot elect the good people. Again, back to that tree, right, as we talked about before. Good tree and bad tree and its fruits. So, same is with the hierarchy. They are serving the people as well. Primarily, they're serving to God. And if they come with the wrong ideas, people should know, and again, unfortunately, they don't, many of them, but the Roman Catholics, they should know very well what is right and what's wrong, and when it's something wrong, they have to resist it. Mm-hmm. They have to resist it to the utmost strength they have. Because, and again, as we said about the devil is part of this world. Always will be until second coming of Jesus Christ. So there is going to be always, entrapments made by the devil. And many of them will look very, very plausible and very, very good. Just like a hierarchy, the bad hierarchy trying to compromise the people's faith. And Jesus Christ was warning about too as well. He knew, 2,000 years ago, that something like that will come. He said it, right? He was talking about the wolves in a sheep cloth. He was talking about, parables about the hirelings. What's the difference between the good servant and just a hireling who is working for the money? He warned about all these things. So we cannot be just so surprised now, like, oh, how is that even possible that, this bishop is, is homosexual and practicing homosexual, or why the Pope is celebrating Mother Earth and Pachamama and joining the woke agenda. Mm-hmm. We should not be surprised about it. This was predicted 2,000 years ago. Jesus Christ didn't tell us, like, don't just be surprised. No. He said, absolutely not. You're not supposed to be surprised. You should be ready, just like good soldiers, to fight back against it with our faith and make right decisions. Just like a soldier should not or cannot listen wrong orders from officers. If the officer tells soldier, like, hey, you go and shoot those 10 civilians over there for no reason, soldiers should say, no, absolutely not. Even that officer is in charge, right? The soldier probably will be like, no, I'm not going to do it.
The moral obligation takes precedent over what the leadership wants.
Absolutely. So therefore, no. But we first, as a Roman Catholics, we need to know what is right and wrong. Mm-hmm. So therefore comes back to what I said previously, that it is very important. We got to start first with ourselves. We got to understand what is expected from us as a Roman Catholics based on our teachings taught from all the way from Jesus Christ. And we have to follow it with our own lives. Once we're going to do those two things, then we're going to be able to defend the church, even against the enemies which are internal, being the hierarchy.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'd love to wrap it up for this week. In the next episode, we'll talk about how to approach life when sin seems inevitable. Does God expect you to do everything correctly? If you have any questions, feel free to send them to us, as we may answer them in a future episode. We'd appreciate it if you could follow us on all social media. And until next week, thanks for listening, take care, and God bless.
Godspeed.